update here. When I was running the computer very hard, I noticed the plastic panel, which is here, was getting a bit warm in this region. Now, I put these holes in here so that there would be better airflow up here. But for that to get hot, that means that there's more hot air coming out than going in. It's probably going to be better if these are covered. So I'm going to do a test here with these aluminium strips to cover these holes up and see how that goes. I think it's probably going to be better. Yesterday I covered the issue of this part of the plastic heating up, and what I did was I trialled putting some aluminium tape over the top of that to block the airflow. The point being that, well, the draw from the fan, and perhaps a combination of this fan down here for the CPU, was enough to pull warm air out of the case into this space rather than air going from this case space into the power supply and being taken out of the back through those vents at the back there. So what I did was as I mentioned, I covered it with aluminium tape, and I've just run a test here with converting a whole bunch of videos as before, monitoring the temperature of the CPU, well, the temperatures here, and the fan speeds, various fan speeds. So decent bit of monitoring. And in fact, actually here, it's a lot cooler here, so that's good. And also the CPU temperature is getting to, this is it here, it's getting to just over 60 degrees whilst the intensive heavy-duty processing is going on. So pretty good. The ambient temperature today in this room is 26 degrees because we're in the middle of the heat wave, although there's a thunderstorm brewing now. When I was running it, I was putting my hand over the case here and seeing a little bit of warmth around here. Measured it at about 34 degrees. So, I mean, this is polycarbonate plastic, so you know it's very thermally stable. So the actual temperature is not an issue. So I think still what's happening from this fan system in here, there's a little bit of draw coming out of that fan through the CPU cooling system that's here. Now, of course, if I'd mounted that on the bottom, then that would, as other people have done, then that wouldn't be happening. Of thinking about the airflow around this system here, this vent system, and the fact that it's getting warm around this point here. And I'm wondering whether when this CPU cooler's running full pelt, that it's drawing air back here. So, in fact, when I bought this case, I also bought two other ones, and this was the best of the parts to build this one up. So what I was able to do is to build a one-way valve for the airflow. So this is using some plastic mesh with little levers, so these will open up with the air flowing into the case, but will close up. And these are on magnetic strips. So I'm just going to position this on this small camera here and install those in the computer and close it up and run it and see what the vanes do, whether they open under normal conditions, which ones open, and also when I run the computer under high load, whether they close, or whether some of them close, or whether all of them close. This is the best that I can do to try and analyse what the flow characteristics are around that vent under different operating modes on the computer. Okay, so there's that one-way airflow valve in place, pretty much in place, yeah. So that should allow the air to flow into the case, but not allow air to flow back out. I'm going to see whether I can position a camera inside so that I can monitor what happens to the airflow. Alright. Yeah, pretty interesting. So looking at that louver system from above, just switch the computer on and you see that now gently billowing out with the airflow caused by the fan pulling at it. The fan is above on the picture. On the illuminated part, the bottom right hand part is actually the top left hand part that I was indicating earlier, because we're looking down on it. And what we will see, I've just moved the light back a bit, that's why it's gone dark. What we will see is this seems to be billowing out in a fairly laminar fashion. But as the whine from the PC increases, you'll see that that starts to billow out a little bit more. But importantly, when the CPU fan really starts to motor as the computer's under heavy load, you will see that bottom left-hand part start to bow inwards in comparison to the larger area of the fan to the left. You can start to see some of the stratification starting to occur now. It's starting to flatten down, and that's indicating to me that the flow, there you go, it's really starting to sit down now. There's this area where the air is, instead of flowing into the case, is now flowing out in towards between the metal case and the plastic area, and it's being drawn through the case into the CPU cooler. You really see it now. It's flattened down, the veins have opened up a little bit, and that's why it's getting hot. So we need a solution to stop that from happening. And I don't think it's covering the vents up, that will just make it worse. In fact, it's really turbulent flow being caused by this imbalance. And what we need to do, we need to partition the space between the left-hand fan intake vent and the right-hand CPU fan intake vent. I've come up with a solution for that. So here's the proposed solution. I'm going to isolate this side of the case from the air intake here. So this here will allow the air to go in to the CPU cooler, and the air around this side should be isolated, and I think that should hopefully stop the air when this is running full pelt, disturbing the airflow from here and starting to pull air across here and down here. That should just stop that. Now hopefully the CPU cooler will still be sufficient, because it's got to take air from a little strip of space here. I hope there's sufficient airflow to keep the CPU cool, but to be honest, my guess is there probably will be. So I am now, after implementing that little memory foam divider, running the system, doing those video conversions, which are pretty processor intensive. So the CPU is running just shy of, well, it's 55 to 60 degrees, so I mean that's perfectly okay. I mean the ambient temperature is probably about 22 or 23, so it's a couple of degrees cooler than it was earlier. Fans are running full pelt, well, pretty quickly anyway, and I feel the side of the case here where it was getting warm, and it's just not at all. It's absolutely perfect. So, you know, the key thing is by separating. You know, I realised that when this processor fan was going hard, it was really disturbing the flow and pulling air that should have been going into the case here, pulling it out and then round and bringing it through here, and this was causing the plastic to get hot, and obviously is suboptimal for the airflow across the motherboard. So by putting this little soft divider here, that has isolated the intake for the CPU down here and kept the intake for the fan that blows onto the motherboard there separate. So we should be getting now good laminar flow onto the motherboard, and now we also have well, probably less airflow into the CPU cooler, but at least it's all cool air and it's not pulling hot air from up here into the intake. So, and what's more importantly, the side of the case is cool. So that's a really excellent solution. So yeah, so there we go. if you're going to do this, don't put holes in the side there for the power supply, and use some sort of divider if you put holes in this. If you mount the liquid cooler in the way that I've done, make sure that you put a divider here. Obviously, if you mounted it so that the air intake was coming up through the bottom, then that you wouldn't have this problem. But you'd have to use a smaller cooler, because that one with that radiator, which is really fit for purpose for that processor, 95 watts, wouldn't fit lying flat. So yeah, pretty pleased. I'm pretty pleased. So I've now optimized the airflow in the case. A lot of warm air flowing out the back here very freely. Very good. Well, so final refinement, I'll include that just so everybody's got the full picture. Cheers.